press truly free in Africa? Well, in an age where information flows faster than ever before, the freedom of the press remains one of the cornerstones of any democratic society. Yet across the African continent, the role of journalists is increasingly on the search, caught between authoritarian crackdowns, restrictive laws, economic pressures, and digital censorship. While some nations celebrate vibrant media landscapes, others operate under the shadow of fear, where truth-telling can cost not just a career, but also a life. A few days ago, media professionals commemorated the World Press Freedom Day under the theme, Reporting the Brave New World, the impact of artificial intelligence on press freedom and the media. Today, we confront the critical question: what are the limitations to press freedom in Africa, from subtle forms of state control to blatant acts of intimidation and violence? We explore how politics, power, and policy collide to shape the boundaries of free expression. What does it mean for the future of democracy on the continent when the fourth estate is stifled? When and who are those, or who bears the ultimate cost when the media is silenced? Ladies and gentlemen, this is not just about journalism, it's about accountability, transparency, and the soul of public discourse on the African continent. You're welcome to the conversation. Hello, fervent televiewers and listeners of For You Media Africa. It was a pleasure to be in your company where we talk matters affecting the African continent and beyond. And this day, we shall be discussing something pertinent, not just to the African continent, but most especially to media professionals across Africa. And of course, like we mentioned in our preamble, today we shall be talking about press freedom just a few days after the world actually celebrated what they call the World Press Freedom Day. And of course, we should highlight that to have this conversation this day, I'm being joined by a panel of experts. To kickstart with a lady on board, I'm being joined by BADRA DABBEBI, a journalist and fact-checker. She's based in Tunisia, but equally, she commemorates or works in line with issues concerning Libya and the Maghreb region. You're welcome on board.
Thank you so much, Sharon, for the invitation. I'm so glad to be here with you, and thank you again for the invitation.
It's a pleasure to have you, show up our platform this day where we discuss matters that are very important to the development and, of course, growth of the African continent. This time around, to a gentleman, I'm being joined by Mr. CHUCKEY RADAMEL Thomas, a journalist and political analyst who is joining us all the way from Liberia. It's a pleasure to have you today.
Thank you, Sharon. Let me say good afternoon from my end in Liberia. And thanks to your valuable listener across your country, Cameroon. It's good being here on this platform, and I look forward to a fruitful conversation as well.
Of course, just to reiterate that our audience is following us via the airways of FM 96.3 For You Radio, your Pan-African radio. And of course, we shall be streaming on our social media platforms. Now, to debut today's conversation, before we dive deep into today's analysis, I would like us to listen to an excerpt carefully selected by the news desk of For You Media Africa, where we saw the Secretary of State of the Secretary General, I beg your pardon, of the United Nations, Antonio Guterres, speaking as media professionals were celebrating the World Press Freedom Day. We shall be right back.
In a world plagued by conflict and division, World Press Freedom Day highlights a fundamental truth. Freedom for people depends on freedom of the press. Free and independent journalism is an essential public good. It's the backbone of accountability, justice, equality, and human rights. Journalists everywhere must be able to report freely and without fear or favor. When journalists are unable to work, we all lose. Tragically, this is becoming more difficult every year and more dangerous. Journalists face attacks, detention, censorship, intimidation, violence, and even death, simply for doing their jobs. We are seeing a sharp rise in the number of journalists killed in conflict areas, particularly in Gaza. And now, as this year's theme reminds us, press freedom faces an unprecedented threat. Artificial intelligence can support freedom of expression or stifle it. Biased algorithms, outright lies, and hate speech are landmines on the information superhighway. Accurate, verifiable, fact-based information is the best tool to diffuse them. The Global Digital Compact adopted last year includes concrete steps to strengthen international cooperation to promote information integrity, tolerance and respect in the digital space. AI must be shaped in a way that is consistent with human rights and puts facts first. And the global principles for information integrity I launched last year are supporting and informing this work as we push for a more humane information ecosystem. On this World Press Freedom Day, let's commit to make this a reality and safeguard press freedom and the press everywhere.
And that was the Secretary General of the United Nations, Antonio Guterres. Now, to kickstart today's conversation with you, BADRA, you listened to the Secretary General of the United Nations speaking on World Press Freedom Day. Now, back to our topic of discussion. You have a wider experience, from Libya to the Maghreb region as a whole, as far as, trying to understand how journalists, be it females or ladies, are trying to cope with, diverse issues as it comes to press freedom. From your perspective, from your experience in covering Libya and the broader Maghreb region, could you tell our audience what are the most significant threats to press freedom today, especially in conflict heat or conflict-affected regions across Africa?
Okay. Thank you for the question. First of all, let me introduce the organization that I work with. CHUCKEY organization is a fact-checking platform that focus on campaigns, disinformation, misinformation, targeting women in the Maghreb region. The most significant threat for press freedom in our days or in our world today is to use disinformation or propaganda as a political tool. I mean, like social media, using social media media outlets by political parties or even by armed groups. This will cause the absence of free and independent media, and this will cause a lot of challenges for journalists, like threats, kidnapping, also attacking them, and this what we are living in the context. Also, this will prevent people from reaching their right to access to an accurate information, and we will find ourselves in a environment full of disinformation from this political party and this political party, especially in the conflict affected countries like Libya.
Thank you immensely, Badra, for that beautiful intro. Now we proceed with you, CHUCKEY. You listen to your co-panelists, and that's in sync with what, the Secretary General of the United Nations was saying. Now, from your own perspective, you're a journalist in Liberia, which is equally an African country. Now, what can you tell us as far as, the most significant or most common barriers that affect your country that, cuts across other African nations?
I think it's the disinformation, the campaigns that are used in the elections, and it's common in the North Africa countries, also in the South and the Maghreb regions. I'm talking about the Maghreb because we in CHUCKEY's platform we do cover the Maghreb region, not only Libya. So the disinformation, using them in elections, using them to raise parties, political party over the other one is so dangerous in our days. And disinformations with the social media, the spread of social media are even more like dangerous. And also we can mention that AI is playing another role.
Yeah, thank you so much. But the question was actually directed to Mr. Thomas. Now, from your perspective, having listened to your co-panelists and, you know, the little excerpt which we shared with you just a while ago, what can you say as far as, you know, some of the issues that are plaguing your country with regards to, you know, press freedom is concerned?
Yeah, thank you, Sharon. So the thing about press freedom in Liberia and from the global perspective is that we understand that the press has a responsibility, and the government is responsible in terms of our press freedom. So with regard to the question, what are my perspective and on press freedom in Liberia? For a little bit of time we've been in Liberia, we understand that the president in Liberia is asymmetrical. What do I mean? I mean that the president in Liberia, it has some significant impact on the media practitioner. It also have an impact on the people who are journalists. So in reliance to that part, you will understand that journalism in Liberia, honestly, from an earner perspective, we are doing what we think we know best for our country to serve humanity, but the boundary, the barriers that journalists face in Liberia is somehow control in terms of our government censorship, government having control over the media in Liberia. And to that extent, you understand that 99.9% or some of the editorial policy, some of the, the reporters that comes out, are somehow favoring to government, somehow favoring to people in opposition. But yes, it's a good thing. And the media in Liberia is on a path, but there are still challenges.
To the African continent in a bit to see the broader picture of what is facing journalists across Africa. You listen to your co-panelists, but then again, in different African countries, we have respective laws, that citizens as well as journalists are supposed to abide by, like you said in your response. So staying with you, Thomas, how are some of the media laws that are put in place in different African countries, going a long way in impacting press freedom and journalistic independence?
Yes, so the media laws in a broader context, those laws that talks about, criminalizing defamation, sedition, talk about cyber crimes, talk about, influence and silencing journalists. Those laws are meant, not to help journalists, but rather those laws are there to restrict us in some ways we think we are to carry on our reportage. But again, those laws also affect us as journalists in a broader context, because you know why? The very actors that controls those laws, the people who are the crafters of the law, and we who are journalists try to work in confirmation with those laws, they can say do a crackdown, Sharon. They can say do a crackdown because I'm a journalist, and by perspective, I want to report accurate, balanced, and quality news. But hey, there are limitations, there are challenges, and those challenges are confronted with regard to how the perception within our country, especially my country Liberia,
Exactly.
I know of much, but I think there is still a challenging path with regard to that.
Exactly, and of course that's why having conversations like this to kind of shape the narrative. Meanwhile, now to continue this conversation with you, Badra, having listened to your co-panelists, moving forward, how does gender influence, access to press freedom in North Africa, which is a region you master so well? Women journalists and fact checkers facing unique forms of censorship or intimidation in that part of the African continent.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah. Women journalists and checkers face many special challenges besides normal risks like harassment, like threats, like hate speech, even jokes like they open the doors to normalize hate speech for women. And these attacks are based on their gender, not their work. Also, these attacks are pressuring them to stop writing, to stop reporting, to stop working, and other women they do literally like stop working, start leaving journalism, and others they're being told by their families to stop working. So we can say that like gender plays a big role in limiting press freedom for women in our region.
Now, given that you're a fact checker, I'd like to continue with you. You stated, because we know that Northern Africa is mostly a Muslim community, but then away from that, in your work as a fact checker, how does disinformation, misinformation as well, campaigns targeting gender issues impact journalistic integrity as well as press freedom within the same region?
Disinformation about the gender is very dangerous issues because we have campaigns that are campaigns, disinformation, misinformation, lies, fake news about women in politics, women journalists, activists, and this will make them lose the trust. We can say, like, for example, women in politics, because of campaigns, because of and disinformation, people they lose trust in them, and in some cases they will go out, they will ask or demand the authorities to remove them from their positions. So the disinformation issue and these campaigns can will make the women suffer to speak up, to be a leader, and to participate in the public life. And we as fact checkers, we are doing our work to reduce from this disinformation. We do correct them, we do publish corrections, but we do also have challenges like because disinformation they go very wild, they spread very easily, and because they target the feelings, the people's feeling, and they interact with them. But the correction sometimes they don't get the same interaction as the disinformation.
Thank you so much. Later on, we shall be coming back to, trying to understand how your organization and your work is, trying to ensure that we have press freedom across the African continent. Moving forward with you, Thomas, you listened to your co-panelists, but then in your previous answer, you stated that media laws in one way or the other might be affecting the work of journalists. But you equally stated that journalists are called upon to do the job and do it diligently. So if I have to go down that same road, to what extent, can government or does government's ownership go a long way in influencing, press narratives across the African continent? And how can we, change this trend?
Yeah. So thank you again. And I want to be factual about what I say on this platform because there are people listening across the world. the media laws and the government censorship, especially with regard to politicians. For I don't know for other countries, but for my country, Liberia, 99.9% of the media houses in Liberia are owned by politicians. So in context, you understand that the ethical principles and standards that we go to school and learn and we want to apply, we've been nationalized, we've been subjected to political influence. So because of that, you will not see a prolific working atmosphere. You're doing a credible job as a journalist. What are some of those recommendations? What are some of the things we think we can recommend to our government, and partners across the continent? Listen, this profession is a noble profession, Sharon. So because of that, we are here to protect the people. We are the watchdog to provide information. So what I think is that, hey, let's strengthen those legal framework. What are those frameworks? Let's strengthen those frameworks, that protect press freedoms. The laws are there, but the laws are not being protected. They're not being strengthened. So when the laws are strengthened, what do I mean by strengthening? I mean that the laws that are written to protect journalists or to ensure that journalists who abide, those laws must be strengthened by going beyond the borders and boundaries. Secondly, to abolish and amend, repressive laws used to target journalists. Some of the laws, that you talk about are laws that are using, to target journalists. Some of the laws are used to target journalists because if you say defamation, when you talk about defamation, we do ethical job. Our job we do ethical job. We reach and we ask questions. But the laws, some of them need to be abolished. Some of them need to be amended. Because you know why? We contribute mostly to the societal norms of our country. Every day, journalists are on their feet reporting issues that affect him on a daily basis. So when we can improve on training and safety, and resource for journalists, in terms of resources, I don't know about your country, but I believe there are still limitations. There are still stagnation when it comes to improving training capacity and resources for journalists. Sharon, and all the listeners across the world, journalists in Liberia, in Africa, and the issue of resourcefulness is a challenge. Because you know why? We work for politicians have a entrepreneur censorship over our job we do. So we are somehow limited in the job we do. And I believe 100% that if we can have a resourceful media economy, we will do a better job because we will not be controlled by politicians. If media institutions can pay journalists adequately, make sure that we are on health benefit, insurance, and our life is protected by laws, and the laws are strengthened, we will do a better job. That's what I think.
Exactly,
Yeah.
and you're just on point. Now, looking at these loopholes across different African countries, I might not be certain about Liberia, but we've seen cases of arrests, threats, violence against journalists. How does this go a long way in affecting investigative reporting and the freedom of expression?
Now,
This is for you. It's for you, Thomas.
You get me, right?
Yes, I do. Please proceed.
Yeah. So the issue of attacks on journalists globally and from the continent perspective, they are realities. They are 100% realities, Sharon. And what I think is that to promote media literacy and support independent journalism, I strongly believe that, hey, media practitioners, media owners across Africa, and even in my country, Liberia, we have to understand that this job is a sacrificial job. Sharon, listen, in a contextualized society, people would believe that, hey, journalists are less important people. Journalists, they are just paid people. No, this is a noble profession. We chose to serve our country and to serve the continent. There are attacks. You talk about investigation.
Right down in Liberia, there's a pending case with regard to mining in Liberia. Now, if I want to go and do an investigation in that process, I'm lacking logistics. I'm lacking financial capacity because you know why? Those institutions in Liberia that we work for, at 9.9% of them are controlled by politicians. So let's say, for example, in my country, Beer Mountain, for example, right? If there are issues with that mining company, and I want to go do an investigation about that, it will have to take me challenges. You know why? Because there are political actors that have influence over those companies. People in governments, people in private sectors. So the issue of full investigation to do not have a compromised society, there are challenges, and I believe our partners and the global people have to understand that there must be more resources added to us, because when we are capacitated financially, we'll be able to do an accurate and a balanced job. But other than that, investigation in Liberia on the continent will still be below the belt, because you know why? We fear our life. We don't see protection. Yeah, we don't see protection. We don't see reliability. Because how am I reliable that when I go do investigation that the decent welfare of my country for other issues that I might not be humiliated? Like for Liberia, they had an issue with regard to the Decent Welfare Act, wherein people must report cases. Report cases. Yes, I do my fast track. I report cases. How am I protected? How am I protected? Because if a source is giving information, I gotta protect that source.
Exactly.
But because of conspiracy in Liberia and across Africa, we still see a marginalization in our job we do, Sharon. Yeah, 100% marginalization.
Hopefully we'll be able to, suggest solutions to some of the challenges that are hovering around press freedom across the African continent. Back to you, Badra. In recent times, we've seen a crackdown, on press freedom in Tunisia, which is a country coming from. So from your perspective, what role does, authoritarian governments across the African continent, security apparatuses, which we're seeing, or legal systems, play a very crucial way in your silencing independent journalism across Africa as a whole?
Yeah. So
no, I'm sorry. This question is for Badra.
Yeah. You get me?
I'm saying that the question is for Badra. It's for Badra, not for you, Thomas. If she's connected, please, Badra, can you proceed?
Okay. In many countries in North Africa, government use the law to stop journalists from doing their work and saying it's for national security or it's for the public order, but in reality they want to control media. In Tunisia, for example, some journalists are being in jail just for expressing their opinion, just for doing their jobs, and being arrested or being not allowed to travel. These things they are doing just to control media, to make journalists afraid to speak, and if the authorities want to provide freedom of expression or to provide press freedom, they will provide strong laws that protect the journalists. I agree with Thomas and what he said, that if there is a strong protection for journalists, they will do their work and they won't be afraid to speak up, because if we silence journalists, then we open the doors for disinformation and misinformation to spread all over. So if we do have a strong protection for journalists, they will do their job freely. But in our context right now, we face a lot of attacks for journalists, and authorities are not really showing their will to provide the freedom of expression or either press freedom.
All right, I'm going to just hang up to you, Badra. You said that we still have this lack of political will coming all the way from the authorities, you know, in achieving this dream of press freedom across Africa. But despite all these challenges, which we might have outlined so far, where do you see hope and progress, you know, in protecting press freedom, and not just in the Maghreb region, but looking at it globally? Africa as a whole, in such a way that African journalists can build solidarity beyond borders?
I see this. This is a really good question. I see hope in young journalists, especially women, who are creating their own media spaces online. Also, young journalists are doing their jobs. I see hope in them. They speak up and they share their stories, even when it is risky. And as well as we on CHUCKEY organization, we all women, and the majority of our team are mothers, and we do our job besides the risks, the dangers. We're still speaking up. We're still doing our job, and this is the hope in the story. I think we can still work, and we can. It's always we're doing our work for the people, for the citizens, and we will do it. In She Checks, we say that. Sorry, the digital place should be empowering for women and not silencing her. And we do our work besides all the risks.
Thank you immensely, Badra, for that response. Back to you, Thomas. You listened to your co-panelist. She stated that despite the challenges, women are still very much engaged in trying to achieve, you know, their role in telling the story of the African continent, no matter the region. And in as much as we still have these challenges, we still see a lot of women journalists, you know, across Africa. But notwithstanding, she evoked an issue of the lack of political will, which is something that cuts across not just journalism, it cuts across diverse sectors, you know, in the African continent. And looking at this lack of political will, do you think there is a way out if Africa intends to move forward in achieving this dream of, you know, of media professionals getting press freedom, the freedom to express themselves and tell the story, if we plan on shaping the narrative?
Yeah, there is a political will, and there is a will forward to that process. But one crackdown I see, and I still maintain, is that politicians and political leaders across Africa still have a supremacy over the media.
True.
And you will understand that the media plays a very pivotal role. So for a successful way forward in implementing that, we have a way forward over the thing. I think 100% yes, we are contributing, we are making strides. But what I think is the African leaders should understand that the job we do, it is a sacred job. It is a job between they and the commoners. So when they are intimidated, when they are having skepticism over the job we do, when we are exposing the ills in society, then they take offenses. So I strongly believe that political influence still has a censorship over the free will of the media, especially in Africa. Trust me, Sharon, and the rest of the African nations, right? You will still see intimidation. Mm-hmm. So to have a successful path in journalism in Africa, we will still struggle, because you know why? There is no media development, no media empowerment. Like for Liberia, the media struggle. we struggle with a lot. Because you know what? The economic empowerment of the media is 100% in the hands of politicians. What do I mean? They are owners of radio stations, newspapers. They have influences over chief editors across the country. So to see a 100% censorship free of the media in Africa, I still doubt, not in this generation, except our leaders can rethink that the job we do, it is for the people and it is to protect the sacredness of our democracy.
So thank you so much. Now, since we continue with the conversation, now in line with the democracy on the African continent, how can we, lay side by side press freedom in ensuring, allowing journalists, giving them the room for them to be able to report factual information, really factual information to the public, so it transcends to democracy, accountability, and transparency in every African state?
Yeah. Sorry. Can you restate the question? Let me get it properly.
Of course. So I was saying, could we lay side by side press freedom, that is the government giving the ability to journalists to be able to, carry out the activities, report factual stories in such a way that it's going to transcend to a nation having, democracy, to the nation being transparent, accountable, and of course, one that is going to lead the country to development?
Yes, so the issue of transparency and accountability in relations to the issue of press, I think the politicians and then the people who take state power, who comes to governments, they have a motive. And Sharon, because of this motive, they will always want to use the media as a stepping stone to shut down some of the deeds of corruption. What do I mean? As a student of politics, I understand that there are backdoor negotiations, there are backdoor conversations. But to have a transparent process in our governance structure across Africa, our leaders need to understand that they've come to serve the people.
Exactly.
Because when we journalists want to question their workings, let's say, for example, my government, Joseph Sima Bwaka, the president of Liberia, told the Liberian people that, hey, under my administration, we will fight corruption. Is Bwaka fighting corruption? Partly. He's fighting corruption partly. Are there still issues of corruption in our government in Liberia? Yes, there are. But what are the efforts? The media is trying to flag out those issues. But again, there is still a barricade over that process. So to see 100% government official fighting corruption to the extent for which the media can make an input, I can still say to you and your audience following this medium that we have to come a long way. And that will only happen when all of us, practitioners of media, politicians, understand we are accountable to the state, because we are serving the state. The job we do, we are serving the state. And they are politicians, they are also serving the state. So we must come to a conglomeration of understanding that accountability must be the hallmark of governance.
Indeed, accountability must be at the core of governance. But then there is a role, the media has always a crucial role in playing, in shaping the future of every country. With that said, how does the press, the media, ensure that we have smooth elections? Because it's not just about them ensuring that we have accountability. It's about them telling the story from an unbiased perspective. You understand? So I wish to ask you, speaking of the media actually shaping the future of a country, how can we link this up to how the role the media plays in ensuring that we have, free, fair elections, and that boils down to the aspects of accountability and transparency within the state?
Now, there is something called level playing field in election reporting, level playing field, and biases. What I know of this, the job we do in Liberia and Africa as a whole, sometimes we journalists, we bring our emotions into the job we do because we are attached. We have an alignment. And I believe as a journalist, when we come to ethical professional job, we should not, attribute our alignment to the job we do. For example, in my country, they just ended elections in Liberia that brought President Boubacar to power. Yeah, the media plays a very pivotal role, but yet and still, there were some people who believed that they have what we call stakeholdership with politicians. So they have to run propaganda. There are more propagandists across the country because you know why? The politicians feud on the media to ascend to prominence. So to have an adequate and informed election process and government, I think it's about time that we who are emerging in this new profession try to muster the courage that yes, though there will be censorship, though there will be intimidation, but what is good in it for our country? What is good in it for Africa? What is our overall objective about Africa? How do we think that through our job as journalists to put adequately, transparently in these processes and taking away our emotion? Because Sharon, listen, we are humans, and being a journalist does not negate the fact that you don't have a reliance. But there is still a central core of impartiality. We gotta be impartial, not to be partial. When we hold to the standard of being impartial, then we deliver tangibles. But I can say to you, there are too much of emotions in our reportage, especially when it comes to electionary processes, because all of us have an alignment. And journalists, we should be for the public, for the country better good. But again, because we are African, because we are humans, we will still see the human sentimental side in the job we do. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Now, earlier on, we have this rise of citizen journalism that has been taken, has been the talk when it comes to journalism as a profession in the past decades. But then, looking at citizen journalism as a term, do you think that it has accounted for one of the factors, that is hindering, press freedom in respective African countries and to a global perspective, the African continent?
Sharon, citizen journalism is some way, somehow, a barrier. What do I mean? We are to be accurate, balanced, and objective in our reportage. But citizen journalism, we now want to look into those things. They will just want to report. They will just want to report. They want to break the news. Like for my country, everybody has Android phone. Everybody has Android phone. Everybody is a journalist in Liberia because once you have an Android phone, you are a journalist. No, I think it is still an embarrassment because now because you have an Android phone make you a journalist. No. So I see that to be a challenge. People can report. If you have an issue, report that to the Records Authority, meaning those who are professional journalists, that they will not come with sentiments. But citizen journalism, it comes with sentiments. There are people who might have alignment with political affiliation. They have access to an Android phone. For example, in my country, there are two major political parties. You got Unity Party, you got the CDC. So there are folks in my country that believe that whatever the government does that is not in alignment with opposition, they will run with it. And they say, oh yeah, this government is corrupt. It's in the days. That's citizen journalism. They have a crackdown on full investigation. So I think it is still a challenge. And I encourage that, but those who want to get into that must get schooled. Because Sharon, when you are not schooled into journalistic practices, it leads to problems.
You go against the norms and the ethics, yeah.
It leads to, for example, one of our colleagues, I wouldn't put her name for protection's sake. but he reports stories. And the institution have to frown at him because he has a motive. He has an alignment. He's a journalist, but he brought his feeling into the processes. So I believe citizen journalism still has a crackdown on ethical journalism. And I, for one, I don't support citizen journalism. You know why? Because it has a propensity to cause chaos. Because as a professional journalist, before I report something, I must fast check, I must balance my argument, I must make sure I reach out to both sides of the device before I can report. But unless it's journalism, they'll just want to break the news without finding out the facts. And I think it's a barrier to ethical journalism across the country.
And I'm very glad you were able to evoke the issue of the internet, which will lead me to my next question. You mentioned that people who do having, electronic devices, the few they can be journalists, but then what is the impact of digital surveillance and, internet shutdowns on freedom of the press in different African countries? How does this affect, the ability of journalists, media professionals to be able to carry out their task diligently without any problem?
Sharon, digitalization from a global perspective have played a significant role in today's journalism because there is a convergence of media across. It helps us, transmit our reportage to the visibility of our audience. But again, it also has a negative effect. What do I mean? Like I stated earlier, everybody in my country, in Africa, has an access to Android phone and to internet. And because of that, and you always found that there will be reports coming out that the reports are not fast-checked, are not balanced. And because the reports are not fast and they are not balanced, they have an impact on us. Yes, the media plays a pivotal role. Digitalization improve, like today you and I'm communicating with you because of digitalization. It's a 100% impact. It have improved our job. Today I'm in Liberia, in Monrovia, right? But today I'm talking to thousands of Liberians through your medium. That is some of the benefits of digitalization. But again, it also has a negative effect. It lowers the performances of accuracy in investigation. What do I mean? People want to break the news. People want to be branded as the best journalists, the best newsbreaker, the best bloggers. So because they have access to the internet, they will run our stories that are now 100% authentic. Even when it is authentic, you must still do due diligence to the sources, because they are human source and they are documentation sources. So if people get the information, you got to counter check. So I think digitalization have 50% impact on our job we do. It also have 50% negative impact on the job we do because it helps provide accuracy and speed. It also have crippled down effect because we send a report without doing fast check and findings on what we report.
Thomas, who is joining us all the way from Liberia, just got indications that we have a new person on board, NJIX, who is the communications officer for the Paradigm Initiative, a Pan-African group. It's a pleasure to have you on board. I was discussing with your co-panelists on, the impact of digital surveillance, and internet shutdowns on the freedom of the press. But I'm just going to kickstart with you, or just continue the conversation with you, Gio. Now, how are journalists navigating some of the challenges of reporting on sensitive information, issues like corruption, conflict, human rights abuses? Though we have this crackdown, we still have this crackdown on press freedom, across the African continent.
Thank you very much, Sharon. It's a pleasure to be here, and it's definitely a pleasure to share the panel with Thomas. So this is a very important conversation we're having. And one thing I would like you to note is the fact that we are in an era which is digital. So regardless
Exactly.
of what you do, the internet is so how then do we address this on the internet, right?
Z, I'm
We
thinking,
know it
yeah, can you hear us? Can you hear me?
important
The network
media
is not
people first
steady,
and
unfortunately, but we're hoping that's going to stabilize and we'll be able to
embrace
get
the
you,
internet. It is
for you to be able to, share with our audience your point of view vis-a-vis
for them
today's topic of
to
discussion here. But then just to reiterate, ladies and gentlemen, if you're just joining us, this is Talking Point of our Pan-African channel for you, Media Africa, where we discuss in this day the limitations of press freedom in the on the African continent, and we've been drilling this conversation since the start of this show today with our assistant guests. Just to proceed, I'll be proceeding or diving this question to you, Thomas. I was asking Gio earlier on how the journalists across Africa are navigating some of the challenges to report on sensitive issues like corruption, human rights abuses and conflicts, given that conflicts are affecting a lot of countries on the African continent. So, we just got indications that Gio is back with us. Gio, can you hear me?
toolkit called Ayeta. And yes, sure we can.
Unfortunately, we're still unable to get you. So, Thomas, please, you have the floor.
Yes, so
I can hear
think
you,
yours is
Sharon.
back.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can,
Oh.
but unfortunately, when you start speaking, it's unable. We're not able to get you from here. So I'm thinking that we just hold in for the network to stabilize, and I'm just going to take you back. Thomas, please, can you proceed?
Yes, so the question was coming between you and I. So I will appreciate that you restate the question so that I can have a proper understanding of the question.
It's about how journalists are navigating the challenges to report on sensitive issues like corruption, conflict, and human rights abuses.
Okay. Yeah, so again, Sharon, and so your folks listening, journalists are making immense strides and contribution. And corruption, I think, is a state of being. What do I mean? Corruption is on the mind. People to be corrupt, it comes from the mind. So to fight corruption, it means we have to deal with it internally. And when it gives birth, then we see the real ability of what corruption is. So yes, we are still struggling. We are still making strides to make sure that we report issue of corruption cases. But are there 100% reliance on what we report? Sometimes yes, sometimes no. Because you know why? There will always be the issue of interference. Mind you, like I said earlier, the issue of censorship, the issue of censorship, of government having control over the media is a factor. The legal restrictions, it's just about law, libel, some of the things we say, some of the laws that are erected, economic pressures. These are challenges. These are things that limit us. These are things. So in order, to have these things done, we talk about violation of intimidation. We want to report on those issues, but we fear these things. We fear that, the social cultural factors are also elements of these things. So I strongly believe that here we can contribute, but there will also be challenges.
John? Thank you so much. Thank you, Mansley. Thomas, back to you, Gio. Now, speaking of what your co-panelist just stated, as I was asking you, now looking at how we can, navigate these various challenges. In what ways do economic factors, such as media sustainability, job insecurity, for instance, restricts the aspect of journalistic freedom?
Thank you very much, NJIX. So in certain climates, practically every have been.
Unfortunately, we're still unable to connect with you, Gio. It's rather unfortunate, but we're hoping that, we'll have better experiences. Now, Thomas, you've listened, we've been discussing this topic, since the start of this show, but then we have reiterated that it's important for journalists, while the advocate for press freedom, to equally, have in mind the ethics of the profession, the norms, and deontology. But then I was asking your co-panelists, how do you think aspects like, economic factors such as media sustainability, job insecurity go a long way in restricting journalistic freedom across various African countries?
Oh, Sharon, media economic empowerment is important. And the reason I'm saying this because I know challenges we face as journalists across Africa. And because we have limited resources to what we do, there will always be limitations. And one thing I can say is that if all of us who are practicing this profession, whether in Liberia, in Ghana, in Africa, in Angola, and everywhere across the continent, we have to understand one thing, that the resourcefulness from media practitioner and media institution will always help us do professional job. I don't know for you, but my country, in Liberia, journalists are not even show. If people do this job in Liberia, and if you don't do blackmailing, you don't do yellow journalism, you don't have to where you want to get. And I think, no, it's a bad thing to do. You know why? Because we have a future to protect in this profession. It only comes about when we have media empowerment. Media empowerment. The media has to be empowered. Because if the media isn't not empowered, you will not get best coming out of us. People will compromise. People will compromise because you know why? They feel that they are not having issues of reliability and assurance of the after endings. Yeah, that's what I think. So we need more media economic empowerment. If the media is empowered economically, how many media houses in Liberia in your country owns businesses? I will see this money. If a media, you can do business. You can run up businesses because you know why? To avoid people having to dig into what you report, having a crackdown into what you report, you must be so empowered. Media owners should have a budget, a timeline for the budget. For example, people open radio stations in Liberia, in my country, I don't know about yours, with no budget. And the economy in the country is poor. They want to raise revenue from advertisement before they can pay journalists in Liberia. And I think, in my opinion, as a journalist, it's wrong. If you want to open media institution here in Africa, have a budget, a plan of action. In 5 years from now, 2 years from now, I'm building this radio station, this television hub. What is the application of paying my staffers? Well, unlike, there is no budget, there is no account set. They only raise money from what they generate monthly and pay staffers. And I think that where you will see limitation in the job we do. You go cover a story, you wait for cattle in Liberia, Palan, I wait for cattle. And you interview a politician, you want him to pay your transport to come back to your station. It's unethical. It's highly unethical. because it have an influence over the job you do. For example, I'm a politician. You come and interview me, and I give you transportation. Fair analysis. Will you report accurate news? Will you report accurate stories? There will still be an influence because I gave a gift. I gave a gift.
True.
So media institution must be cognizant of the fact that they must empower journalists that work for them to do ethical job. Other than that, we will still have government censorship over media control across Africa. Yeah.
Yeah, it's true. I heard you, Thomas, but I'm still a little bit concerned about who are those to empower these journalists, and if they do, don't they have a hold, on the narrative of how they get to report their stories? But that should be a topic for another day. Back to you, Gio. We got information. Your network might be steady at this point. Having listened to your co-panelists, do you believe that independent journalism is undermined on the African continent?
So it is a very funny question when we bring in the concept of independence for journalists. But I would agree with him that there is need for the media to pull away itself from that financial bondage which different stakeholders have. And it's not only about the government. Of course, everybody loves the power. And if the media, if you have that power to control the media, you'll be happy. So
exactly.
We don't have to wait as the media for anybody to come give us that empowerment. The media has that power in its hands. How do we? We are in the digital age. And these days, media is not tied to a particular location or a building or a structure. Media can go beyond. Also, media is able to reach its target audiences better than it was doing back in the day where you had to basically share newspapers at people's doors. So I think we of the Fourth Estate as media people, it is incumbent on us to take that opportunity or to take it as a duty and say, okay, we are breaking from these bonds. It is a call back to us of the media core to say we are breaking from these bonds of finances, and then we can discuss whatever it is we call independent journalism then, because until then, it's simply going to be media playing to the tunes of the different stakeholders.
Exactly.
But going beyond that, going beyond wishful thinking, what we do at Paradigm Initiative is first, we empower the media people, because then you can't break away from these bonds if you're not secure. And in the digital age, everything revolves around technology, from your phones to your computers and your digital identity. Once they have a hold of you on these, there's nothing you can do. So what we do as Paradigm Initiative is we provide support for journalists. We have a digital security toolkit that helps journalists keep safe. We train journalists on how to stay secure, from telephone lines to their email addresses to what have you, everything digital. And we also provide platforms for them to be able to express themselves. But we don't just do this in the air. We do a report every year. And what that report does is that it highlights the state of digital inclusion across Africa. And it's called Londa. For the first time ever, this report highlights key aspects, and it does a ranking of the 27 countries we have. And guess what? We have countries which are first, which are really good in certain aspects, but we also have countries that are last. In this ranking, we look at harassment of journalists. We look at the undermining of digital security of different people, including journalists. So it is important for journalists to understand that these are the challenges that they face, but they too have to know that at this moment we have the power in our hands as the media, because nobody's coming to fight for us. Nobody's coming to give you that independence which you want as a reporter or as a journalist or as a media house. Like he said, it is time for us media people, it is time for media houses to take that financial independence upon ourselves and work towards achieving it.
I'll be staying with you, Gil. We have media regulatory bodies in diverse countries across the African continent. But are you of the opinion, or could you answer this question, that media regulatory bodies, first of all, serve public interests and are tools of government control?
So this is a little bit funny because it reminds me of a conversation I had with an official of the Media Regulatory Authority of Burundi. I think it was sometime last year. And I asked him that question jokingly. We were flying back to Cameroon. And he asked me if I could ask that question to my fellow countryman. It was a little bit funny. But then it showed that there are certain conversations which we still don't want to have.
Exactly.
Of course, it is important to have regulatory bodies. It is important, but the first regulatory body of the media has to be the media. we have trade unions, we have journalist associations and what have you, and those have to be the first regulatory authorities. Fine, it is understandable governments would always say we want people to monitor and make sure journalists follow the rules and they abide by law. No problem. But then the bigger challenge comes to the point where countries begin to criminalize press crimes, or press concerns where they can send you to jail. And we have seen these laws and these regulations used often as a tool of repression rather as a tool to safeguard social peace. They're being used as tools of repression where a reporter is sent to jail because of a report they did, for example, or because of what is claimed to be a press crime. So I think it is challenging when you look at the regulatory body for media. They have a lot more to do because beyond regulation, they too have to work to protect journalists, But oftentimes they're used as a tool for control rather than a tool to make sure the sector is regulated.
I'll just get one last question before I jump over back to Thomas. Now, Zio, I was discussing with your co-panelists, Thomas, and of course, Badra, who left us a few minutes ago, about, whether the media it could help in ensuring that we have democracy in our respective African countries. Now, I'm asking you almost the same question. How does press freedom vary between democratic and authoritarian, leaning states across diverse African nations?
So there is a direct correlation between an active media and a proper democracy. Because the role of media is to hold people to account, not just public officials, of course, but then it is to hold every single actor in society to account. That is the primary role of media. But then we still see a situation where people are jailed for telling stories, people are jailed for their work, and reporters often fall into problems with the state because they spoke to some sources or because the state believed that they had some alliances with some sources. So there is a direct correlation, and that's why any country which has a problem with its media definitely has a problem with its democracy. Because as a media person, the stories you tell are stories somebody somewhere doesn't want you to tell. They don't want you to tell to the public. So if you put out a report out there and everybody's happy, you're doing publicity. You're not doing journalism. You're not doing proper reporting, But then when we look at the fact that these challenges already exist, we cannot tell the challenges not to exist. Our work at this point is to see how to safeguard journalists who are telling these stories, journalists who are bold and brave and are able to stand out there and tell these stories. We have seen internet shutdowns when elections are approaching because they're trying to silence the press, they're trying to silence communication. What do? We provide support to journalists. We have things like VPNs, for example. There are other communication methods that we help journalists with to ensure that their work still goes on smoothly. But yes, I agree with the other co-panelists 100%. A country's democracy is as healthy as its media and vice versa.
Indeed, and that is the way forward to having a prosperous nation. Back to you, Thomas. We've got a few minutes before we draw down the curtains of today's edition of the program. Now, Thomas, having listened to your co-panelists, we are trying to, boil down to this conversation and retain one or two things before we move or before we part ways. What impact do international organizations, and press freedom indexes have on shaping national media policies across Africa, from your perspective?
Yeah, so their impact on, sorry, I want to get this done. The impact on the international involvement with regard to press freedom from the perspective of because I'm a student of political science as well. And when you talk about international relations, it comes to bargaining, it comes with interest. It comes to interest, right? So those foreign countries across foreign institutions and war organizations, they have a stake. They have a stake in the affairs of most African countries. So you wouldn't see a 100% independence, opinion coming out of them. For example,
my country, Liberia, our biggest ally is in America. America have a stake in Liberia in terms of our foreign policy analysis, in terms of our foreign interests and foreign operations. So I don't see a definite 100% control, because you know why? There will always be interest, because the media is powerful. The media is a powerful element, very powerful, that even the guys in the West understands the influence of the media. Sharon and to Debbie, right? As a person, I made it my duty to be a journalist and understanding the work as a politician. They scare the media. They scare the media because the media breaks silence on those issues. But for international organizations, they really have a 100% supervision rule, because you know what? They all have an interest. They have an interest. Like why it's unfolding across the African region. You see, there are different kind of repertorial duties and reportage coming out of Africa with regard to Burkina Faso, with regard to Libya, with regard to other countries, right? Like Liberia, ECOWAS. So you will see different kinds of repertorial duties, and international partners, they wouldn't have much to say, because local media are terrible to their objective and agenda. Like I said again, from a political perspective, there is a bargaining of interest in whatever we do. So I hold the view that those institutions don't have 100% influence over what we do as the personal people across our country, because they have an interest. The laws are not strong.
Okay.
The laws don't take effect.
I will ask you one last question before I give the floor for Guy to conclude. Now, from your perspective, Thomas, how can civil society, grassroots movements, at their respective levels, support the protection and expansion of media freedom in our diverse communities?
Sharon, most media civil society group across Africa, they start on a very good path. They also depend on the media to promote them, because they are advocates. They look out to promote their stories. But when we found out that their advocacy is not in the interest of the massive, but their advocacy is for self-aggrandizement, then you hear them branding us as this media is unbalanced in their reportage. I think civil society group supposed to cooperate with the media, because we are all advocates of human dignity and human respect. But on the contrary, majority of advocacy groups across Africa, they have a motive. They want to dine and wine with the power that be. So you will say, for example, civil justice movement, for example, advocacy group in Liberia. What is the motive behind that? They want to get close to the power that be. They want to be among the bourgeois. So they wouldn't have much impact on us. My thing is, we who are media practitioners and media institutions across Africa must stand framed by empowering and equipping us. Because when we are equipped financially and we have control over our workers, we will do professional job. I don't see an issue of civil society to be a stepping stone, or because you know why? They are also riding us to succeed. Because, for example, you get one precious group in your country, the media promote their stories. Like my country, right? The media promotes civil society group stories. So when we find out they're in alignment with politicians, then the final has bias in our reportage. So they don't have a much stake on our independence. That's what I think.
Good to have you today. Ladies and gentlemen, that was CHUCKEY, RADAMEL Thomas, journalist and political analyst. Now to conclude today's conversation, it's now time for Gil to give our conclusion. Gil, now you listen to your co-panelists, though you joined, midway towards the end of the conversation. We are reflecting on how to chart the way forward for the African continent, in line with ensuring that we have a healthy atmosphere for journalists across Africa. So From your perspective, what are some of the prospects, for a freer press, if I may use the word, in Africa in the next decade, or I may say the next 20 years, and what reforms are urgently needed if we want to see, press freedom, effective press freedom across the African continent?
So there are so many things we can talk about and so many things we can do, but I would like for us to focus on one, which is collaboration, multi-stakeholder collaboration. So journalists cannot do it on their own, same as no other group can do it on their own, be they civil society, be they activists, or what have you, right? Even the political class, they can't do it on their own. So what happens is we need that multi-stakeholder collaboration. Why am I saying so? Because everybody has what they do. Even in civil society, we have those who have things they're focused on. But a lot of times you'd realize that it's not even journalists, for example, that are advocating for the release of a fellow colleague. When a colleague, for example, is arrested or maltreated or whatever, people tend to forget about that after a day or two. Who stands up to keep fighting for them? We have civil society. We have pressure groups. We have organizations that do that work. Their job is to monitor the well-being of journalists across the globe. And they are not even journalists. So it becomes a tricky situation when we begin to talk and say, oh, maybe civil society or pressure groups or activists are buying into the political class. I think we have to go beyond casting blames and saying A did right and B did wrong, and we need to look at a multi-stakeholder collaborative approach. And this is very, very beneficial for every actor, which is what we at Paradigm Initiative, for example, we do. We collaborate with stakeholders, we work with people from different societies or different organizations and different classes of society. As one who is himself researching in conflict resolution, I perfectly understand that these divisions are sometimes used by the political class to stack us against each other. But then imagine a society where the civil society, for example, is working in tandem with the press, and then that automatically means that we have basically all we need to be able to push for action, to push for better policy reforms, to have better treatment of our journalists, and of course, ensure we have more press freedom, which in itself is an indication of a glowing democracy.
Thank you, Mansia Giozi, Communications Officer at Paradigm Initiative, for taking our time to be with us this day.
Thank you very much.
I equally say thank you to Thomas, who equally participated on the conversation, but I wouldn't forget, BADRA, Babadi, who equally participated in today's conversation. Meanwhile, ladies and gentlemen, it's on that note that we shall be drawing down the curtains of today's edition of Talking Point of our European African channel for you, Media Africa. It was a pleasure to be in your company. We believe you learned a lot from today's conversation that's centered around press freedom. Meanwhile, do have a great day in company of our numerous programs.